Good evening, I think we can say at this hour. Welcome everybody. It's my pleasure to be moderating this session. My name is Trine Gluduan and I am the climate advisor in WWF Denmark. I have lived 15 years in Vietnam, so I'm particularly happy to be moderating this session. Very exciting on Vietnam. That just this week. Yes, please come in. We just started. So I think today we're going to celebrate actually the very exciting commitment from the government of Vietnam just Monday this week that they are aiming for net zero in 2050. I think that's really leading the way in the Asian region, being still a developing country by OECD DAC, making it very ambitious, also committing to the shift from coal to clean energy this morning. So I think we have a lot of learned from Vietnam, setting a very ambitious target. Of course, Vietnam will then also need partnerships in technology, in financing, to be able to achieve this target. And today we have a good mix of perspectives from the government, from the non-state actor perspective on how can Vietnam go about revising the NDC, shifting from black to green energy, and engaging the non-state actors. So I'm really happy to have a good panel here of three. We will also listen in from Vietnam with 2 interventions as well from Zoom. That has been pre-recorded because it's very late now in Vietnam, but nevertheless, they are contributing to the mix of perspectives. And we also have a participant from Myanmar to join and have a few perspectives from the region. So I'm very happy to welcome you all. I would just say in terms of housekeeping, I will just take care of the time, and I will also invite questions from the floor, from the dedicated audience that is here, in the extent that time allows. So please, I will invite questions later. But it's my pleasure first and foremost to invite Associate Professor Huỳnh Thị Lan Hương from the Institute of Hydrology, Meteorology and Climate Change in the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment to give us a presentation on how Vietnam is going about the NDC revision in order to meet this new commitment of net zero by 2050. Please, Ms. Hương.
Yes, so ladies and gentlemen, actually I have a presentation and it may take some time to put in the screen. And in my presentation, I will talk about the new point of the NDC, the update NDC in Vietnam. Yeah, so the slides are coming now. Yeah. From this slide, you may see that in the past year, Vietnam has made great effort on responding to climate change, and we have a legal system for supporting the climate change activity in Vietnam, and we got the resolution from the party and also the law concerning to climate change, and we also developed the national strategy on climate change and green growth and national action plan for that. And other ministry and sector also developed the document system for supporting climate change activity in Vietnam. As you know, Vietnam submits INDC in 2015, and then we submit the update NDC in 2020, and now NDC is one part of the environmental protection law, which was adopted in 2020. And in order to develop the NDC and implement responding to climate change action, there are 5 perspectives of climate change response. So first is Vietnam considers the climate change response as the center of the development decision. And also responding to climate change must be linked with environmental protection, disaster reduction, gender equality, and other policy. And responding to climate change is the responsibility of the entire political system and also for the people. And actively and effectively adapting to climate change, disaster prevention, GHG emission reduction in accordance with the socio-economic development plan and NDC implementation. And we will mobilize and rationally using resources for climate change response. And this is a methodology for develop the NDC in Vietnam. We consider three pillars, development and also mitigation and adaptation. And three pillars will harmonize and co-benefit together. And for updating NDC, we have three processes: the management process, and the government assigned Monterey as the focal point for the developed NDC. And we invite experts in mitigation, adaptation, synergy and co-benefit, socio-economic impact of mitigation action, and also climate finance involved in NDC development. And we also organize a consultation workshop with the ministry development partner and also with the province to finalize the NDC in Vietnam. And this is the PAU scenario. The PAU scenario developed based on the medium economic development scenario and also based on the energy demand, GDP growth by sector. And you may see that in 2030, the GHG emission can be up to nearly 930 million tons of CO2 equivalent. And for develop the mitigation target in NDC, we calculate for two cases. The first is with domestic resources only, and also the other is with international support. And criteria for selecting the mitigation measure including co-benefit consideration, feasibility in implementation, synergy and co-benefit with adaptation and social development, and compliance with national and sectoral development plan for the period from 2021 to 2030. And this is the targets for mitigation in the NDC. You can see that we developed the targets for energy sector, agriculture, LULUCF, waste and IP. With domestic resources by 2030, Vietnam will have reduced totally GHG emission by about 9%. It is about 33.9 million tons of CO2 equivalent. And this contribution can be increased by up to 27% compared to the BAU. It is about 250 million tons of CO2 equivalent with the international support. And also the NDC of the update NDC of Vietnam, we developed the target for adaptation. And the target of adaptation in the NDC, we have three main targets here. The first is improving adaptation efficiency through the strengthening state management and resources, strengthening the resilient and adaptive capacity of economic, natural and social system. And also we consider about the reducing damage caused by the natural disaster and increasing climate extreme due to climate change. From three main targets, we also set the specific goal and tasks for adaptation. And in order to implement the NDC, Vietnam will focus on the measures to promote implementing of update NDC, including develop and improve policy and institution, and raise awareness of people and through the communication and education, and develop and apply the resources for climate change activity. And we also consider about the implementation responsibility and arrange of resources for implementation of NDC. And so far, there are some issues that has been developed in order to support for NDC implementation, including here. You can see that's law of environment protection, which was issued in 2020, and in which NDC is one part of the law. And we also consider about the develop the degree of mitigation and the circular in order to detail some article in the law from environment protection. And NDC will be integrated to all of the development activity as required in the law. And we also develop the support program to implement NDC. So that is the content of my presentation about updates NDC in Vietnam. So thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you very much, chị Hương, Ms. Hương. I think we can all hear that indeed Vietnam has a very comprehensive approach to climate change, both in terms of linking it, mitigation, adaptation with development, integrating it into your development policies, and actually into all of your existing policy framework. So it's a very comprehensive approach. Also good to see you moving forward with the implementation. And I think that's maybe a question also for today is exactly how will you achieve the new net zero target, and how will you move forward with the NDC implementation. And I'm very happy to invite the next speaker, Ms. Nguyễn Thị Khanh, who's the director of Green ID, who's been working for many, many years also on climate change in Vietnam. And would like to invite you to share your perspectives on really how can Vietnam move forward, what can be the role of non-state actors in the implementation, in the revision of NDC, and in the transition towards a cleaner energy. So please.
Yes, good evening everyone, and thank you so much WWF for organizing this session. So I am here on behalf of two alliances. One is the Vietnam Coalition for Climate Action. Another one is Climate Change Working Group that Green ID are both core member. So as a non-state actor, we commit to contribute for the national effort to address and respond to climate change in my country. In our work, we not only implement the activity on the ground with the community, but we also contribute to the process of the policy development through the consultation to provide input for the policy, but also like share our perspective from the independent view. So I think on behalf of both Alliance and also from Green ID perspective, I am super happy to hear that the Prime Minister make a very ambitious announcement and commitment to achieve, to take all the measure from domestic effort and also international cooperation to lead our country to achieve the net zero emission by 2050. And also this morning, we also hear from the Minister of Trade Industry Ministry on the the commitment and the sign on the global statement on coal transition from coal to clean energy. I think that it is amazing effort from the government, and I share with our friend that that is really a brave decision, because we are a developing country. We still have a lot of challenge ahead. But making this statement, showing the strong determination from the national leader on the way they want to lead our country too. So as a citizen, we very support and show on our devoted and energy to work along with the government on this super ambition target. So from the civil society and also from non-state actors that we are now working with, we intend to do more on the community, but also we really want to cooperate with different agencies from different ministry, from environment, from transport, from energy, and also the finance minister and ministry to see how we can mobilize the effort from civil society, from business, to join hands with the government, because we well understand that we have a lot of challenge and we need a lot of resources. And we also need innovative way to mobilize the resources from the society, from the people, and also from the partner. So I think that we have strong commitment, and we devoted for the goal the government set. And we see that now we find a big allies in the way towards the climate change targets, and very happy to see that the government makes a commitment. Seem like we opened the gate, and now we need to build the road to come to the end. So I think that I want to support for this, and also from our perspective, we will go along with this, and so strong support. Yeah.
Yes, okay. Hein, thank you very much for your contribution, and I think just underlining very strong leadership from the government, and from that you can mobilize non-state actors. Maybe there'll be questions later on exactly on how you do that, maybe some concrete examples, but before we move into questions, we'll have a Zoom intervention from Vietnam, which is actually an analysis done by the Microfinance and Community Development Institute on what is the funding gap for Vietnam to make this transition and to achieve this net zero target. So I would like to invite the Zoom intervention, and it will be Mrs. Nguy Thị Kim Hoa who will make that intervention, so please.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hoa from Microfinance and Community Development Institute, coming from Hanoi, Vietnam. I'm very happy to be here today to present to you about our research on climate finance status and new direction for net zero in Vietnam. To start with my presentation, I would like to touch a little bit on the role of our MACD and VCCA. As you know, VCCA stands for the Vietnam Climate Action Alliance, which has been established to commit to taking concrete action to engage the government and other stakeholders and alliance in a joint effort to respond to climate change and equitable energy transition in Vietnam and global. MACD is very proud to be a part of VCCA as a founding member in this organization. MACD is very specialized in the providing financial study and financial assessment consultancy service to other local and international organizations. Uh, Being a part of VCCA, MACD carry out the mission to connect resources to promote cooperation among stakeholders for a green, safe, and sustainable solution to Vietnamese people at a reasonable and effective cost. MACD is engaged to do this research on climate finance strategy in Vietnam in order for us to have a full picture of the current status of financing for climate change activity in Vietnam, as well as any local budget is allocation to respond to climate change. You also showcase in our presentation. The reason to come up with this study because you can see that firstly, Vietnam is a local middle income country extremely affected by the climate change impact, and even we have been mobilizing quite a number of projects for this climate change activities, but we still face the issue of the high CO2 emission and also other environmental issues in the country. That's why it is a high need for MACD to work out the details of the current climate finance. So our studies will cover the current situation of climate finance in Vietnam. What is the budget from the local authority, the national level, as well as how our country has been mobilized the funding from other investor and the international organization. We also touch on the experience from other country for our lesson learned as well as best practice applied to our country. But we want to focus more on the current gap in this climate finance as well as try to give some recommendation for the government and the VCCA member in the next 5 years to come. The first part of my presentation will touch on the current status of climate finance in Vietnam. As you may know, our country, our government has set up the national strategy on climate change and also action plan on climate change for the past decade from 2010 to 2020. And our government recently emphasized very much on the diversified financial resource and boosting effective investment. At provincial level and at subsectors action plan, our government also want to give firm action and the budget for each respective sector to focus on the climate change activity, and also at the provincial level to also focus on such a mitigation or adaptation activity of climate change. However, as forecasted by our Ministry of Planning and Investment (MPI), the country still have a huge gap in the need of the investment capital until 2030. We need about 30 billion US dollar, while the current available funding source only meet 30% of such a huge amount. Due to the insufficient in the central budget, our government has pushing the local authority at the provincial level to provide additional source, but it still have a financial constraint at the moment. For the mobilization of funds from international and local source, it is still limited as the country now become the middle income country, and the borrowing cost from the development organization has increased double from 1% about 10 years ago, now going to 2 or 2.5% per annum. That's why it's really a huge financial burden for the country. And for those implemented projects at the moment, mostly prioritized to the adaptation climate change action, so not much on the mitigation activities. With such a current status in Vietnam, our study have also highlight some key gaps in the climate finance in the country. The first one, that is a limited funding source, as I mentioned, because we have had on the action plan or the climate change strategy in place, but without funding, without financing, we cannot materialize those objectives. Even with the recent NDC objective to incorporate into the national policy framework, it also requires the large amount of funding from national as well as international financing. Without such a financing, it will restrict human and operational capacity of the whole country for effective climate change governance. And the next point is on the climate change related activities and its outcome. Even the high climate change activities spending observed recently, but the outcome is still low in terms of the financial feasibility. One example here is you can see the five key ministry total budget with only 18% allocated to climate change. It means only one fifth of the total budget of the five key ministry. And of the 15%, of the 18%, only about 88% go to the large infrastructure project already, and more on the irrigation scheme. So only 9% was for science and technology as mitigation action. So that is a huge gap. And some develop policy to mobilize international finance. It acts as a plan of as expression of interest only to fulfill other identified objectives and not really go to mitigating or adaptation to climate change activity. And the next gaps is the lack of financial support and knowledge at our grassroots level. So it results in the weak community-based mitigation activity, and people like those in the living near the forest or in near the coastal area very much dependent on the international finance support. Without funding support, they tend not to do much thing. Uh, the next point is also limited capacity of our staff at local NGO or the local authorities. They are not familiar with the climate change planning, and also they don't have the skill to select and decide to prioritize financial resource for climate change adaptation and mitigation activities. And it also has happened with the misuse of adaptation funds. They are not matched at all to the actual action or local adaptation need. And some adaptation activity or project do not have climate adaptation at all, and they do not tie to any specific reaction to climate change. So that is the waste of the fund for the climate change. And the last part, and also in last but not least, is the ICT tools and MRV for the climate finance. In the country, it's in essence of the MRV tools and other financial data analysis for the alignment adaptation funding with the necessary protection against uncertain future climate trend. So that's why it's strongly um, recommended that the country and other key ministry need to focus more on the ICT and to synchronize on the data and figure for a full and complete picture of the climate finance in Vietnam. With all such a gap, we try to give some key recommendation at this point. Firstly, we want to focus on the budgeting reform to promote cross-ministry budget allocation and planning, and also to have a strong cooperation mechanism among ministries for available funding for climate change activity, and how to drive the fund to the most impactful sectors that needs the strong cooperation. and promote a private-public partnership for sharing skill and assets or other resources by the private sector for the country to deliver better outcomes to stimulate further growth and fill the gap of the falling ODA funds. And the government should also give measures to improve the policy framework to support the PPP development. With such improvements, so the country should be able to attract more investment in mitigation technology and building investor confidence and mobilize more fundings from the private sector for climate change. The next part, we want to touch on the financial aspect. Firstly, the government should strongly encourage the financial instrument and insurance scheme for the climate change to develop green and sustainable financial instrument and insurance product for the climate change risk. And the second area is to set up the natural disaster prevention fund at provincial level for mitigation activity and for fair allocation of fund. And the government should also try to think of the financial incentive like tax credit for wind project or tax exemption for the new and environmental friendly technology to come into the country for the tackle of the climate change issues. And the next part is on the regulation of the financial disclosure and the rating of the financial instrument. The application of the EU Sustainable Finance Disclosure in Vietnam is very critical, and it requires the key ministry like a Ministry of Finance and other big four firms to look into this part and develop the standard financial disclosure for all area in Vietnam to build up the confidence for the investor from the local and also the international organization. And also the government need to develop the technical points on how to rate the green bond to make the financial system quite transparent to attract the more private sector investment. And the last but not least is also on the ICT system. On the key line ministry should build up the MRV system and the other ICT tools at national and local authority for data collection, processing, and analysis and forecast of any uncertain climate change to the country until the 2030 and 2050 to reach a new direction for the net zero in by 2050 in the country. So that is the end of my presentation today, and thank you very much for your attention and listening, and I wish COP26.
Okay. Sorry about that. Just to keep you all awake in this late hour, I think thank you to Ms. Hoa for a very detailed analysis on the gaps with regards to financing and funding for the climate action needed in Vietnam and to implement the NDC. There were many gaps identified, many recommendations for the government, but also some good opportunities, and I think I will open up the floor for some questions. We also have some questions on the chat, but just one thing I picked up was, for example, that there's a lack of funding and capacity for community-based adaptation or community-based mitigation, actually. So maybe here there's a good opportunity for financing through nature-based solutions, for mitigation outcomes, as well as also adaptation co-benefits. So certainly also opportunities for Vietnam. I would like to open the floor for questions here in the room, and I also have some questions here. I think Ibrahim from, maybe you can just introduce yourself. Kogang, will we have a microphone for the... No? Okay, so just...
Yeah, my name is Ibrahim Mutebi, and I work as the Renewable Energy Manager, WWF. It's glad to hear that Vietnam is aiming for net zero by 2050, which is a great ambition. I wanted to inquire, will the country then revise its NDC, because the current ambition seems to point at a 27% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, and my thinking is that to reach net zero, there's need to bend the curve more to be able to mitigate emissions. Secondly, are you looking at also developing a long-term climate change strategy? Because then NDCs are short-term to 2030, and maybe if you are aiming for net zero, you'd need to have a longer-term climate change strategy. So I wanted to, understand that.
Yes, thank you, Ibrahim. I think we'll just take a few questions, if that's okay. I think the first one was for you, Madam Hung, so you have some time to prepare. So,
Yeah.
yes, please.
Thank you, Trin, and thank you, Vietnam colleagues. I'm Simon Weredong, the Conservation Director of WWF Uganda, and we are happy that the program we are doing here, we are also doing in Uganda, so it is good learning for us. But my question is on indigenous peoples and the gender. To what extent are indigenous people involved in the implementation of these policies and the NDCs? And do you think there are some gaps that needs to be addressed from what you have experienced? Then two, to what extent are these interventions gender integrated? Are women in the room as you are discussing these policy issues, youth and the like? Because if they are not there, then the chances are high that it will not be much impactful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Simon. Other questions? If not, I will let Madam Hương maybe have a first reply.
Yes, thank you very much for your question. And as you may learn from my presentations, Vietnam has submitted the NDC in 2020, and after that, the government also issues the environmental protection law, and NDC is become one part of the law. And in 2021, just a few months ago, the government also issued approved the national strategy on green growth, and now we are developing the national strategy for climate change also, and in the update national strategy on climate change, we are also thinking about how to get the targets for net zero as the Prime Minister committed already. And I know that we know that it is a very ambitious target. So the first thing we think that for getting in order to get the targets, we have to completely develop the legal system first, and then we will try with the real action for changing in energy in energy using from the fuel to new renewable energy in order to get the target, and it is very, I think that it is very difficult for Vietnam now, but we have to try our best for getting the target from the government. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Hương. I think also Khanh, you have a contribution for this question, please.
Yes, thank you. I think I want to follow up what Chị Hương just mentioned, because all the sharing from the NDC is happened before the reason statement, right? So I think that I sharing the the challenge and also like a lot of workload for different ministry after the COP. So firstly, from my personal perspective, I see that the power deployment plan number 8 is still in like draft version. It needs to be updated to make it in line with the statement of net zero. So a lot of change need to be happened, and especially for today commitment from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, I think that we need to revise the power deployment plan number 8 in the way that no new coal will be built. That is first thing, and also accelerate much more higher like renewable share in the power mix in the next 10 and 20 years. At the same time, we also need to strengthen the international cooperation for technology transfer, climate finance to support for our ambition. Then also the action plan for green growth is also coming in. I think that is the opportunity for different actors to contribute. So I think innovative way to attract finance is super important at this stage. And then, as Chị Hương mentioned, and also I also understand that the draft climate change strategy, right, with the outlook to 2050, I think that is also an opportunity for updating the effort. So really share the burden with the ministry in the coming time. But I think when we choose the way, so we need and we have to find the measure. So I think that is what I see. Yeah. And also your question on gender and youth, I want to share that the Ministry of Environment and Nature Resources organized a number of like consultation in which like we as an NGO were participated in it, and we contribute our input for the like consultation process for both the law on revised law on environment protection and also the decree on the carbon markets and for the climate change strategy. So that is we from civil society provide the input, and I think just we have a representative here. Maybe they can also share how JUST has been contribute for this. Yes.
Yes, thank you, Khanh. Actually, I know that the Climate Change Working Group that you're also representing has actually worked with the Department of Climate Change under the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment to integrate gender into the National Adaptation Plan. So I think Vietnam is really advanced in that way and really trying to integrate climate change into other policies, but also very much policies into the climate change policy framework. So thanks a lot for those answers. There were actually also similar questions on the chat with regards to will there be new targets, will there be new plans, and also how's the participation from youth. So that's very similar. I think, yes, I think we can take one more question.
So I'm glad, to learn that Vietnam is much more advanced than others. Because this is my first time I'm learning about Vietnam's experience. What I wanted to say is, have you finished your NDC? And second, what kind of advice can you give for countries like mine to to have a typical or the best synergy so we can leapfrog without having to make the mistake you have done in the process of achieving what you have achieved?
And could you just introduce yourself?
My name is Terhas Hagos. I'm the head delegate for my government, the Eritrean government, but I have been in the negotiation process since 2004. attending most of the COPs. And my area of focus is gender, climate finance, and Article 6.
Thank you very much for your question, and great that Vietnam can be of inspiration even with so much experience in the climate negotiations. I don't know, Madam Huong or Khanh, do you want to respond to the question? I think yes, Vietnam has an NDC submitted in 2020. You want to give a response maybe for, yeah, Chị Huong? What do you think other countries can learn or should pick up?
Not easy to to talk because maybe
okay, maybe Chị Hương can have some chance to think about it, and we can also, Khanh, you can have a short comment, and then I'll actually like to invite Shun to make a comment, because he will share perspective from Myanmar side, what they are learning from Vietnam, so maybe that will help answer the question as well. So Khanh, please, for a short comment.
Thank you so much for posing us the question, and I think that it's a sharing. From my experiences, my personal experiences, I see that the success is built up from, first is the political wind. Whenever we have a strong political wind, we will have the success. It ensures, yeah. I think the first step to have, and we need the rural electrification program in Vietnam. So Vietnam, I think that we are among the top country has ensuring the power access for almost 100% of our household. Even we still have I think nearly 200,000 households in the country do not have a power from the access, but we reach very high rate. I think 99. 80%. Yeah, so I think because of the government have a strong determination on making the people have a power access, and it mobilized the public finance, the private corporation, and also it have a model 50-50 model. The national government provide 50% of the support, and the local government and the people contribute 50%. So I think I want to highlight first is the political win, and then it, as the Madam Huong said, it's also followed by the legal framework to allow the frame for the development. And from my observation, what we learn, I think also that is the lesson for the power development. Yeah, I think that is not only Vietnam. Many countries, when we develop the planning for the future, we always based on the past. Yes, so I think that is what happened in many parts of the world. But nowadays, with breakthrough technology, it changed totally the way we frame the future. And what we learned from the power planning over the past 10 years, I think technology is the thing, it changed totally the future. And when the planner taken into account the technology, and we also need to consider the conversion of different technology. When it comes in one point, the interaction between different technology will create very big change that we couldn't imagine. So I think that is the point we learn, because in our power planning number 7, the government projected to meet the power demand and also the coal power very high. 75,000 megawatt by 2030. But after 5 years, we revise it and reduce 20,000 megawatt of coal power. And now we reduce 15,000 megawatt of coal power. We learn that technology change will change everything. So I think that is thing we learn, and I think many other countries also learn. But not only technology, finance, I think it's super important. It will like when it affect our like feasibility of any plan. Without finance, we cannot do it. So analysis of how the finance will operate in the future. I think that is also super important lesson learned for us. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Khang. I think the other lessons learned can be shared over cake after the session. I would just like to keep time to invite Shun, who is our colleague from WWF in Myanmar, to maybe share your perspectives of what you have learned from what you've heard from Vietnam and your interactions in Vietnam. So maybe that can help answer the question as well, please.
Absolutely. So thank you, Trina. So maybe a bit of an introduction. My name is Sean. I work for WWF. I'm Vietnam's neighbor. I work in the Myanmar, so we are in the same region. So there are also some similarities, but also there are some difference in the ambition. So I think that will actually help answer some of the questions. So the first thing is about Myanmar. Just like Vietnam, Myanmar actually submitted our INDC in 2015, first NDC by 2020. So this is similar, but ambition is actually very different. So I was part of it for the previous administration of government to, as a non-state actor partner, to advise on how NDC targets could be developed. So we actually trying to, as a developing country, I think the same way Eritrea is, we have a conditional target. I think the technical advisory groups suggested conditional targets as well as the unconditional targets for the country compared to the baseline, just like Vietnam. So maybe one of the main big takeaway is, the first thing is the ambition. I think this is the most advanced in the region, the Greater Mekong region for the Vietnam's net zero ambition. Myanmar is not there yet, but we would like to be. So the first thing that we are trying to see is how this type of ambition actually help Vietnam. I think Myanmar still have 50% of electrification. Vietnam has 99 point something. This is basically ambition. They said something, they follow up. So this is something that we will actually take away. I think Myanmar actually share the similar situation as Eritrea. We haven't done much climate mistakes, but we could have also leapfrog. So the first thing that we will actually do is, if there is somebody ambitious in the region, what are the lessons learned that we can take? So that is an immediate step. And the other part is like, my background is renewable energy. So every time I heard about renewable energy, and also the ambition that the neighborings have, then that is also really good. Myanmar is still struggling on, in our NDC targets, still struggling with some of the potential mistakes like coal and also mega infrastructure projects. So what we actually want to encourage more is renewable energy in the mix, which is also decentralized. So last but not least is, now somebody said the ambitious target, congratulations Vietnam, but then again, how are they going to actually follow through? I think this is somewhere that Myanmar is also looking at. So the one thing is, government is there to implement, but what are the other stakeholders, what are the actors are going to act in the region? So for example, I work closely with indigenous people, I work closely with communities for ecosystem-based adaptation, nature-based solutions, and also community mitigation projects, including renewable energy. So what we are actually trying to do is, there's a part for every stakeholders to play. And if I might say, I think the important part is also the role of non-state actors. What type of models are we going to do? Because if we only rely on one entity, then it will actually be slower. If we actually want to speed up the climate ambitions, then we actually can not divide and conquer, but more like decentralize it. Also work directly with the communities, and also let the communities and indigenous people lead on their own term. So I think those are the main takeaway from me that I'll take home and also advocate back home. One of the points that Simon also mentioned, because I had NDC experience, is for the indigenous people, gender, etc. Most of the time, a lot of mindset includes, we will develop it first, then we will consult. Then this is also a model that sometimes makes stakeholders very unhappy. So if I get to do that all over again, to work with the legitimate government, to develop the new NDC targets, and I will actually get the stakeholders draft it so that like everybody will be it will be inclusive since day one. Maybe I'll make a stop at first because
Yes.
this is more about Vietnam. So thank you.
Thank you, Shun, Climate and Energy Program Manager of WWF Vietnam, Myanmar. Sorry for not introducing your title, and for sharing with us your reflections. Not developing coal, leaping right into the clean energy, and when it comes to consultation, we'll actually start with engagement and not consultative at the end. So I think some good experiences. You also mentioned importance of partners and finance, and we're just about to come to a close. And we'll have a comment from the Danish embassy in Vietnam. But before that, I might like to invite a comment. I've been informed that Shaska Belling, I don't know if it's you, are here as a representative of KfW Development Bank for Asia. I don't know if you have any reflections with regards to what you've heard about Vietnam and yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. What a surprise. I'm very happy that I came here and I learned a lot about Vietnam, a country I've been responsible for 2 years now, and I've unfortunately not had the chance to travel to. So I really hope that beginning of next year I can actually travel to Vietnam. And as KfW, one of the international financiers, we are very interested in supporting Vietnam and continue to support to reach the NDCs and towards net zero achievement. And we have a very big portfolio in the green sector already, in reforestation, in adaptation mitigation, in the coastal sector and the area, and we are very much looking forward to broaden this portfolio and to continue the very good cooperation and establish relations with Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shaska, and sorry for putting you on the spot there, but what you certainly have heard today is that there's a big financing gap and funding gap, so I think Vietnam will very much welcome partners in development. And that being said, I would just like to play the last intervention, a Zoom intervention from Vietnam, from the Danish embassy there, which will conclude our session. So please sit back and relax and see the last intervention. Thank you.
Well, at COP15, I think it's safe to say that some building blocks were established and put into place, and they have been serving kind of a platform or foundation. So 6 years later, when the whole world came together successfully and adopted the Paris Agreement in order to fight climate change, that was also partly because of the results from COP15. Then, with the upcoming COP26, it is essential that all countries will live up to their commitments in accordance with the Paris Agreement. And in order to achieve that, I think we urgently need that all these countries also, you would say, increase their ambitions when it comes to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And that is why that Denmark has committed herself to reducing her emissions with 70% by 2030. And in fact, we believe that that is not only necessary, but it's also possible, so it can be done. And you have to remember, when it comes to Vietnam, that nearly 70% of all greenhouse gas emissions come from energy production or consumption. So therefore, it is paramount that climate action in the energy sector is put into place in order to achieve a green transition in this country. But we should not forget climate financing as well. And there I'm happy to say that Denmark will play her part. We will contribute with at least $500 million annually from 2023. And I'm also happy to say that we will strive, and we are set on achieving 1% of the total global target of $100 billion. Yeah, the cooperation between Denmark and Vietnam in the areas of climate change and energy has actually been going on for many years by now, and I think it's safe to say that by now it has evolved into a full-fledged partnership. Already back in 2009, Denmark was the first country to support Vietnam's national target plan on climate change, and since then the Danish government has provided some 140 million US dollars to finance climate change and green growth activities here in Vietnam. At present, a key element of the Danish-Vietnamese Energy Partnership Program is the Energy Outlook Report, which, among other things, also will provide a number of scenarios for Vietnam's green development of the energy sector. And according to the 2021 Vietnam Energy Outlook Report, Vietnam has a great potential for a green transition, which by 2050 actually could save greenhouse gas emissions equal to 45 coal power plants. At the end, I would like to say that Denmark is very keen on supporting Vietnam in handling issues related to securing energy for continued economic growth in this country at competitive prices, while at the same time also support Vietnam in handling all the challenges related to climate change.
So yes, thank you to His Excellency the Ambassador of Denmark to Vietnam. I think it's good to finish on the high note that at least Vietnam does have friends out there that are committed to support with technical partnership, with financial partnership, but also with the global commitment of reaching the 100 billion US dollars. And we have other friends here tonight, so I'm sure that with the high ambition and commitment that Vietnam has shown the way, and once you've shown the way, you will also find it the way to get there, right? I think that was your words. So thank you everybody for staying so late, and I think we can conclude. Thank you to the panelists, and have a good night. Thank you.